Welcome everyone. My name is Guillermo Sanchez and today I'll be presenting teaching effective ways of practicing to new or returning students. The main focus of this lecture is for everyone to be able to teach their students different ways they can practice at home. Also for you to learn what are some of the steps and some of the examples that they can do or like at home or you can teach to help them have a better and more efficient practicing. Okay. Our first one will be this chart that I created. So this is the most basic or structure that we as piano teachers should follow. First one, we'll have to identify the notes on the piano and stuff. So whenever we give student one of our pieces to practice, one of the first things we have to teach them is first you got to identify what notes are being presented in your music. The next step we have break it down into small sections. Since beginner students or like really young students, they don't know how to break it down or how much of a length they have to be practicing every day. We gotta help them break it down into little and smaller sections. As an example, if we have a one-page piece they're preparing for the recital, we can divide it into either 4 measures at a time or lines. And if the music is really simple and has a lot of repetitions, we can divide it into 2 main sections that we gotta help them out. The next section will be fingers and hand position on the piano. For more advanced students, sometimes they require different fingering or some repetition of the fingers that they maybe not be aware of or they might be confused. So we gotta help them out first, writing down what fingers they should be using, and same as well, what are some difficulties on the piano that we may find. The next one will be our goal tempo, which should be divided in 3. We gotta help them out first, understand that there are 3 main tempo practices that they should divide every time they practice. First one will be slow tempo, the medium and fast tempo or goal tempo. All of them should include the use of a metronome to help them out with more steady beat and a better precision on the piano. So whenever you have you assign a student a piece to practice, make sure you give them the 3 different tempos, which is low, medium, and goal tempo. That will help them develop a more precise and better technique when they're practicing. The next step will be our hands separate and hands together. Some students have that difficulty putting the hands together with so much information they have. So how do we help them out? First, we give them hands separate information. So first, learn this section that we divided first, right hand, and then left hand. If you see the students are doing well, you can have them the hands together. But if you don't see any progress, don't do the hands together yet. The next one will be repeat until it feels easy and comfortable. So we follow this pattern of repetition, slow tempo. They're practicing their sections hands separate. If it feels correct, they can move into the different tempo until it feels easy and comfortable. And then we repeat everything from the beginning whenever we study a new piece. Okay, so we go forward into this is just a basic understanding of what we as piano teachers should be teaching our students. There's many different methods. There are many different approaches to help your students learn and practice better, but this is just more a basic one. Following, we're gonna be reviewing some of our different methods that I've been researching, different techniques and different ways to help our students have a better understanding and that will help you become a better teacher. For this next section, we'll be reviewing one of our really familiar method books. It's called Piano Adventures by Faber. We'll be reviewing the level 1. So this is the next level after the most basic one we're teaching. So this one is more challenging for some of the younger students. So please make sure you take some notes for the following instructions. I want you to pay attention to what I'm gonna be playing, some of the techniques we'll be gonna be using, and You can write down some of the quotes that are really essential for you to understand each of the sections. So let's jump into the first one. This one is called backward practicing. And if you can please read the last bullet point over there.
By working backwards, the students' thoughts and ear are programmed to focus on the treatment of the final note of a phrase, how it should sound, and what to do technically to produce it.
Perfect. Thank you. So for this section, we're going to be focusing on going backwards, as it says, but focusing on the treatment of the final note. So some students have a problem getting into the final notes, like what is going to happen in this final section. So as the example here on our picture, we have this two last measures of this song. It's called Square Dance. We're going to be working from the final note up into the beginning of the second to last measure. So for example, you're going to ask your student here to play the last the C chord over there. Perfect. So make sure you play that for them. It's not really hard place to play. And now we're gonna ask them to add the previous note. Okay, so you're gonna be repeating this again. Make sure you tell them, okay, perfect, that's how it sounds. So we wanna focus onto that ending, okay? After the students are capable of playing that one, we're gonna be adding the previous note. So in this case, it's the D on both hands. And we go it again. So for our next, as you can see the pattern of repetition in this exercise, we're gonna be adding each note, or in this, like if you feel it's really easy, you can add a measure. But if it's too hard, I don't recommend that. So for example, we're gonna be using the next second note of the second to last measure on an F. So in that way, we can help the students feel more confident and more comfortable on what they're practicing. So this is called backward practice, and it helps you focus on specific passages that need to be refined and be worked on. Okay, we're gonna move into the next one. The next one is called finger preparation. So for our finger preparation, I'm gonna be taking the C major scale. Some of your students in this level usually struggle with moving the finger underneath. As for example, we have this C major chord, and if you see, finger number 1 goes underneath our finger 3. So how do we help students learn that and like memorize stuff like that? So let's review it right now. We're gonna be placing our hand on the 5 fingers, so C, D, E, F, G. We're gonna be playing the first 3 notes, and we're gonna prepare the finger number 1 underneath. So let's do that one again. Okay, now on the part of preparation, we're gonna cross. So we're gonna play C, D, E, F, and we're gonna stop there. As you see, when I move my hand from E to F, there's this preparation section. So that is called finger preparation, meaning let your student help get the next fingers ready on the next section. So you can practice that with your student a couple of times and get their hand ready for the next section they have to practice. As they get the feeling of this, you can move into the next notes. So this is why it's called finger preparation. Just let them know they can stop a certain part to get their finger ready. Not always, but like at the beginning, so they can have a feeling of what is coming next. Same on the way back from C to the other C. They can stop and prepare the next note. So C, B, A, G, F, and we don't play the E yet, but we just have that preparation. After they're done with that preparation, they can just play the E and play the next 2 notes on the next notes. Okay, so that is called our finger preparation. It's mainly used on scales, but also it can be used in different pieces where they're having some fingers that are changing. For example, if they do a chord and they have to jump for another one, you can do the finger preparation as well. That's one of the techniques you can help them be prepared for the next on what is coming. We'll move into the next one. Our next topic will be practicing with staccato. So many of the students, and when they're younger, they have a little problem playing everything like evenly. I don't know if you noticed that. Like many of your students like play like, and they're not really even whenever they're playing. So how do we help them with that practice? Okay, so I'll be using on the first activity, or the first, well, the second one, it's called Jack and the Beanstalk. So on this one, we have this little 5-finger pattern, actually 4, that goes. Okay, so what do we do with staccato and how is that gonna help us? Can you please help me read the first bullet point?
This practice technique gives greater strength and agility to the passage and engrave more firmly on your memory the order in which the notes follow each other.
Okay, so what do you guys understand about staccato here? Myself, I understand that this will help you firmly, okay, that's one of the keywords, firmly sticking to your memory. So how do we do that? This will help them with fingers evenly, same as their memory. Okay, they will know, okay, this is the pattern, this is what is gonna happen. So whenever you're telling your student to practice certain passages, ask them to practice staccato. Yeah, it sounds different, right, than other, like playing everything legato. But if you guys practice staccato, or like help your students learn that if they practice staccato, things will be a lot smoother whenever they have to change into legato sections. So for example, we're gonna choose a small section. Let's choose the first 2 measures of our piece, which are the ones that already play. And we're gonna practice some slow tempo right now. Okay, we're gonna ask the students to repeat again. If you feel they're comfortable, as we learned at the beginning, we can speed it up a little bit. And so on. Then we can add the next 2 measures over there, starting under your left hand. Same, left hand has a lot of problems with some students. Okay, so you're gonna repeat this pattern until it feels comfortable. This is mainly used for some passages when they use 5-finger patterns, or when their fingers are not really strong and secure whenever they play something. Okay, do you guys have anything you like to add? Make sure you write it down. Any thoughts on staccato? That will be really, really good whenever you wanna, you should try it as well yourselves. Okay, let's move into the next one. Okay, this one is one of my favorites. We all wanna play everything perfectly. Who doesn't, right? Everything must be perfectly played. But that is not possible. For that, we're gonna be reviewing this. This is called the crawling spider. As you can see on the picture, that one has some alterations. So we have the E flat and the F sharp. Those might be like new to your students, or to some people are like, oh, I'm gonna play both at the same time. Okay, so how do we do this? The purpose of practicing with one finger is to help them find the notes on the keyboard. We don't want to stress them out first. We're like, oh, you gotta play finger 5, finger 4, finger 3. We want to help them learn where the notes are on the piano. So that's the purpose of this one. So you follow along with me on this one. We're gonna play the first measure starting on our C. We're gonna be usually choose one of the fingers that are more firm to your student. So in this case, let's choose finger 2 or finger 3. I'll be playing with finger number 3. Make sure you help them have a good shape, not like this, but got a good shape on the piano. Okay, I'm gonna use finger number 3 to play the first one. Okay, so what do they learn? there is this one and this one that are new for them. The E flat and the F sharp, okay? And that is repeated again. So let them practice just with one finger. Help them practice a couple of times, slow, okay? Make sure you play slow tempo. And then you can move into the next section, which is the right hand, which is the same thing. Same thing, right hand, finger number 3. If you feel they're still not comfortable with it, you can move to a different finger. For example, as stated on the presentation, you can use the thumb, you can use the second finger, whatever you feel comfortable with. I'll be using the second finger. And now it feels more natural. Now I know where the notes are, what are the next notes. So this will help you and help your student learn where they should practice if they don't know where the notes are. Okay, you can even tell them to do this method at the beginning of practicing a new piece or something, so they can find out where the notes actually are on the piano. We're gonna move into our next section. Okay, this one is one of my favorite ones, and probably everyone is wondering, how do we help your students memorize stuff, memorize practices, memorize so many different things? So, I'll read a little bit of this from the Piano Technique in Practice. So it's one of the books. It's called, it states, being able to internalize the music you play makes you closer to the music. Okay, that's a key point. Internalizing the music that you're learning will help you a lot better. Okay, so for practicing and as a musician, there are 5 types of memory that we'll be reviewing in a couple seconds. So make sure you write down there are 5 different memory techniques. Let's jump into the first one. The first technique is the oral memory. So what do you guys understand about oral memory? Can you help me read the first sentence, please?
This is practiced by playing a passage and then listening back in your head.
Okay, perfect. For this section, I want you guys to all of you close your eyes. Close your eyes right now. I'll give you 1 second. And then I want you to, gonna play a passage, and then I want you guys to sing it after, okay? I'll be playing it. Okay. You can open your eyes. That's a pretty familiar tune, right? It's the Sleeping Beauty Waltz. Okay, so some of your students are actually good with oral memorization than others. That's one of the key jobs you have to do when you're teaching students. You're gonna learn what kind of practice memory technique they're more familiar with or are easier for your students. In this case, oral memory helps you remember tunes, remember songs, and melodies that will help your students become better. So how do we learn this one? So for this one, I'm gonna take a small section. In this case, let's take our first 1, 2. Let's take a little 4 measures on this case. As I ask you guys, close your eyes so you can internalize the music. You can hear it instead of just like trying to memorize like everything just by looking at it. And singing will be an important thing. So if you guys just sing along the melody with me. Okay, singing with your students, it's an important part. You may think like, oh, it's kind of dumb singing with them, but if your student is actually an oral listener, like an oral person, it'll be a lot easier for them. And you can ask your students to sing along different melodies and passages for them to learn and memorize passages. In this case, you can ask your student to just sing it along with you, okay? For this one, something that helps a lot with memorizing, after you play something, you should ask your students to close their eyes and play it. This will help them hear and learn what they're playing. Whenever they play something wrong, for example, they will hear, oh, this is wrong. What's the right note? Perfect. Sometimes closing your eyes many times will help you and also your students learn what the actual notes are when they have to fix stuff. So whenever you are asking whenever your student is struggling with memorizing some passages, make sure to ask them to close their eyes and sing it along with you. Okay, let's move into the next memory technique we have. The next one is called visual memory. So many of us, or many people, are actual visual type of people. They learn or memorize things better when they look at it. I'm actually more of a visual person myself. So for this one, I want you right now to just look at the music. Okay? Let's look at the first two measures here. Let's see the right hand. We have our C, D, E. And then the next one will be D, E, and F. So make sure you look at it right now. Look at everything. Okay. Now I want you guys to close your eyes again. Close your eyes. What's the first note we're starting on? Okay. The first one is a C. Keep your eyes closed. What's our first note of the second measure? Okay. For those that are wondering, it's a D. Now you can open your eyes. You might think like, oh, well, I'm not good at memorizing like this. That's kind of weird, right? That's kind of not my thing. Okay, some of your students, or actually some of you, learn it and memorize it. Oh yeah, the first one was C and the second one was D. So, how do we help students learn and memorize some of the passages by visualizing things? Okay, I'm gonna read the second bullet point. This method is can be put into practice by taking the small sections and studying it with your eyes, all the elements included such as notes, pitches, dynamics, accents, etc. Take as much time as needed for this activity. So for this one, you're gonna ask your student to look at the music, see what's on the right hand, what dynamics they have. For example, here we have a mezzo forte, and some students might realize, oh, I'm gonna play with a third finger. And then you can ask them to play, for example, let's just play the first measure of the right hand. Okay, so we have a C, a D, and an E. Now you can ask your students, now close your eyes, students, and tell me what are the first notes. What do you see? I want you to see the same measure you were just looking at it. For example, myself, when I try to close my eyes and see it, I can see, I can see the C, I can see the D and the E on the actual paper. So that's the type of memorizing. You can ask your students to play something, look at the music, every single fact, and then you can ask them to close their eyes and tell you by memory what the things are. This actually process takes a lot of time, so it's not recommended as much as you take a lot of time in your teaching. But you can ask them for practicing at home to just close their eyes, look at the music, look what they're playing, exactly specific measures, close their eyes and memorize it. That's one of the ways to teach your students this method. We'll move into the next one, will be the analytic type. Okay, so the analytic type, they actually notice and learn music, compositions, techniques, everything they can. Okay, they analyze stuff. Let's take an example. This is called a Sonic Parade. We'll be using a Sonic Parade or the Two Little Marches. That's what it's called on our performance book of level 1. Okay, as I said before, this type of memory technique is by analyzing stuff. So many of you actually have played piano for a while or a long time and recognize some types of patterns, some types of notes, and actual chords. So let's take a look at the first line here. So we have a C, another C, and a G, and on the left hand we have a C. So of those that you know, what kind of chord is that one? That is actually a C chord, where we realize we're missing the E, but it's familiar to a C chord. Some students familiarize like, oh yeah, this is, okay? Then what is the next one? We have an E, we have a C, we have another C, so that will be another C chord. I'll be like, okay, the first measure will be a C, the second measure will be another C chord. But what about this, the third measure? We have a D, we have a G, and we have a B. Okay, so it will be played this. You can ask your students, okay, what kind of chord is this one, or what kind of sound like? This is separate, and this is together, closer. So they'll be like, oh yeah, that's a different chord than the last one. They might recognize some of the patterns. So that one is just a G chord, and they'll be like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. Same with the next one, that's a G chord, but that's a 7. That's something else. We don't have to tell them that yet if they don't want to, or not familiar with it. But they just realize, okay, we have that pattern. We have a C, we have a G, and another G chord. That's another ways to memorize stuff. We have okay, that just sounds so familiar, like all is the same. And when we move into different sound, okay, that will help your students. Okay, yeah, those two, the last two sound kind of similar than the first two. So those are some types of patterns of repetition, some of analytic stuff. If we have a closer look to this music, we have this pattern of, and in the third measure we have this. You can help your students also into a more profound memory. You know, we have this first 3 notes play the same note and then go into a G. And on the third measure they play a note above, which is the D, and they go back to a G again. So those are the little patterns some students are easier to recognize. Be like, okay, this is a G chord, so it starts on D, and it's easier for them to memorize. So if your student is the type of analytic person, make sure you give them some chords, like understanding some of the notes, some of the sounds, and it's easier for them to remember this type of memorization. Okay, we gotta move into the next one. The kinesthetic. Okay, so this one, the kinesthetic pretty much, it's about like feeling the touch. That's the main thing about the kinesthetic type of students or type of memorization. For this one, we'll be taking the miniature sonatina. Okay, I put the first 2 lines just because they have some interesting stuff. What do we have here? We have a forte, we have staccatos, we have some legatos, and then we ask on this one, move your finger 3 onto that G. So we have a lot of different notes, we have a lot of different movements, a lot of different fingers. Okay, so I wish I could see you guys and like come over and play the piano with me so you can feel what actually this one is. But I will demonstrate it. So let's take the first measure here. How do we help students with kinesthetic type of memory? So we're gonna ask them to place their fingers, place their hands on the first chords or the first notes. Okay, and then we're gonna ask them to close their eyes. So again, so place your fingers on the key. We have a C, B, G, and then another B here. So we're gonna ask them to place their hands and feel it, okay? We want them to feel what, for example, we have here this black note, and on our left hand they can feel there's some black notes again. So that will help them with muscle memory on their fingers. So that's pretty much what kinesthetic memorization is. It's just the touch and the memory fingers they have, the movement and stuff. So for example, on this one, okay, what are some of the things you can tell your students there? You can write it down your ideas. I'm not gonna tell you what the things are, but what are some of the things you can tell your students from this little section here to feel, to do, okay? I'm gonna play this next section here. We're gonna be playing. Okay, so here we have a different feeling. We go from our thumb to a 3, okay? So that also helps them like, oh, that feels different because I'm using a different finger. Whenever they are memorizing a certain passage, after they play a couple of times, we're gonna ask them to close their eyes. So, that will help them internalize the music, just like the oral type, but this time instead of just listening, we're gonna ask them more to like feel where their fingers are going, the touch of staccato, the touch of like the finger movements and stuff. So those are the main things about kinesthetic type of people. Learn small sections and close your eyes and focus on the movement of your fingers and what they are doing. Okay? Let's move into our next topic. And the last type of memorization. So this one, everyone is usually familiar with this one, right? It's called the rote, meaning it's the pattern of repetition over and over and over. We're all familiar with this one. We practice, I think, over and over a million times and memorize it. This actually, in a way, it's efficient, but if you want to become a better teacher, helping your students learn other stuff, the other ones are actually really helpful ways to help your students memorize than just a rote way. Okay? So how do we do the rote type of memorization? It's just repeating things over and over. So for this case, I chose this really simple piece that actually has a lot of repetition. Okay, so what are some of the things you see that are repeated? In the first and second measure, we have the C, D, E, and then A. And then we look at the other two measures, we have the same thing. So why did I show this? It's because it's so repetitive that it's easier for your students to memorize. So if they just play it along, probably not fast at the beginning, probably slow. Repeat it over and over a couple times. If you want to become, if we want to be like a little better on this kind of situation, you can ask them to close their eyes as well. Kind of the kinesthetic way. So that way the repetition doesn't become as like boring, but they can actually be a little more challenging and use some of the other memorization techniques. If we go to the next section, now we have a little different stuff. Okay, kind of similar, but there is there are some differences there. So you can ask them to just repeat the first two measures. And repeat it again. So that way, that's one of the ways they can learn some of memorization. Okay? This is the main part about memorization. Please write down some of the things you want to be using in your lessons. Either oral, either kinesthetic. Rote is fine. I don't have anything against rote. I do it all the time as well. But try to include other stuff as well. Okay. Now we're going into the last part of this presentation. Practicing with metronome. Okay, metronome is such a great tool we have in this time, and it's really important to help your students learn and use the metronome consistent. Okay, or some type of rhythm. They will be highly beneficial for them. Can you please someone help me read the first bullet point? I know it's kind of long, but let's take some pauses, okay? I'm gonna pause you a couple times.
The metronome can help us to develop and refine our technical rhythmic coordination.
Okay, let's stop right there. So, what do you guys understand so far? Some of the key words that I can see is develop and refine, okay? Those are some key words we have. And then the next one will technical and rhythmic coordination. Okay, so we talk about coordination. We're gonna refine our technical coordination of how we play. Let's keep reading, please.
It immediately encourages you to focus on and listen to the actual space between the notes you play that determine the conviction and success of our performances.
Okay, let's stop right there. Pretty big words, right? And those are not my words. Those are I took those words from the piano technique in practice. Okay, so it really determines the conviction and success we have in our performances. So if you want your student to be actual, so they play well, they play like accurate, and they kind of like the conviction and success they have, make sure you use the metronome. Make sure you teach them to use it at the beginning, use it in your technique activities, and use them at home. Those are really, really important for them. Let's take a look at some of the things here. We have our the clock shop. Some of the students usually struggle with some type of keeping the rhythm together. So we have our so this little thing here, I'm sorry, I played too fast. There we go, just in case you were wondering. Sometimes your students want to take this one longer, so you can just divide it into small sections. Have your student just play, okay, 2 beats, 3, 4, okay? So those are some of the things they can improve, refine, as stated, refine some of the teaching and some of the abilities they need to improve. So make sure you have that for the metronome whenever you, especially, not sometimes, but especially whenever you see some type of different notes, different values, different changes. For example, here we have a half, quarter, and we have some rests over here. That will help allow your student to be more accurate on the rhythm and more accurate on the things they're playing. So as we talked in the beginning of our presentation, with having slow, medium, and low tempo are important with the practicing with the metronome. In this case, we have I wrote down some of the advice that you guys can use. Having a goal tempo, you need to subdivide it into smaller, slower tempos so the student can be able to practice and get all the basic elements learned, okay? So we want the basic elements to be learned how? By practicing in smaller sections and in slow tempo, okay? Don't give them something higher they can chew or like whatever. We have to give them something small to keep like their attention, keep them like everything correct. Okay. Let's move into one of the next sections here. Beware of accents and play notes evenly. Okay, so this kind of like reminds you of the staccato section we talked at the beginning. Okay, so let's go over this one really fast. Since we already talked about some of the staccato portion, which is similar to this, not the same but similar. Let me just find it. Okay, perfect. So for this type of playing, we're gonna ask your students, I want you to look at the music. I'm a fine musician. So what are some of the elements we find? We have staccato section, we have some rest, we have different dynamics. We have piano on the first line, forte on the second one, mezzo piano, and forte again. So those are the things they should be aware of that the student's gonna be playing. And then on the left hand says, play the left hand on 1 octave lower throughout. Okay, there's so many indications, there's so many things going on. and the students will just want to play like that kind of type of way. So how do we fix that? First, we're gonna take away all types of dynamics. We're gonna take away everything, okay? Dynamics, different elements, legato, staccato, everything we're gonna take out for this type of technique. So how do we do it? And also take away the pedal. We don't need it right now. The students are gonna play, you can use a metronome for this activity. Everything playing pretty much. And you can show them like this. Okay? Even though it says piano, doesn't matter. We want to help the students have the weight on their arm, on their fingers, so they can play evenly. So if you take out first everything, they will be more likely to improve and play it how it's supposed to look on the music. So make sure whenever you're teaching this student something new, don't put everything together, but take out the not important thing and let them just play everything just neutral with a good weight on their hands and their arms. Okay, one of the last things we're going to be reviewing today will be marking the beat with your other hand. That's another way to use a type of metronome or rhythm style. For this one, we can ask them to mark their beat, a steady beat with their left hand. Why do I do this? Okay, can you please help me read the second bullet point?
This helps with own wheels dependency and develop a steady rhythm created by the student. Since this is not a machine-like beat steadiness, there is more flexibility regarding tempo.
Okay, so this will help them with their own internal rhythm. Okay, so we're gonna be working with internal rhythm and also with playing. Okay, so I'll take the one we're playing before. I'm a fine musician, and I'm gonna count in the rhythm with my left hand. This way you can help your students have a steady beat when they're playing something. You can help them be more confident and have more stability when they play. Sometimes metronome is great, but it's a machine, as we all know. And some students have a hard time with it. So if you feel and you see your student having a hard time with staying with a metronome, ask them to clap with one hand and having to play their piece and whatever section they're playing with the other hand. That will really help them have a better steady beat, and then you can add the metronome later on. So those are the main things about this type of rhythm situation, this type of work. And here I'm gonna just put the references that I took all the quotes and some of the activities. They're really great books. If you they're also here at the library if you want to read them. They have some other practice techniques and other practice stuff for you to see. They're here at the library. Thank you so much, and please make sure you help your students with all these techniques. They're wonderful. There are many different kinds. It's your own teaching, it's your own style. Choose the ones you like, choose the ones you want to try and implement them in your teachings. Thank you.